The world you're watching us, it is definitely time for In Focus, and my name as always is Eugene Anangwe. Every Sunday from 9 p.m. we get together here just to put on the table some of the important matters that need some discussion around, just to make a bit of sense out of them. And tonight on the program, as you've seen on our social media platforms, we're going to be dissecting one of the most talked about items that will be on the agenda on the 21st of this month, when over 20 African heads of state and government will be converging right here in Rwanda to actually put pen to paper on an agreement that is seen by others as going to be a new dawn for Africa as far as intra-regional trade is concerned. And of course, we just want to make sense out of this agreement, what it means, what it entails, what is it about, and of course, some fears here and there. We will try to understand them as far as this is concerned. It is an interactive conversational show. All you need to do, as you can see, is simply add the hashtag InFocusRW, and throughout the program we will be looking at your feedback right here. So far we've been able to see several tweets coming through, like this one from Ganji Mamira, who says, besides Nigeria that just retracted for further consultations, which countries are set to attend the Africa Continental Free Trade area and sign and endorse? This is definitely something that we'll also be trying to make sense out of right here on the program. So allow me to introduce very quickly my panelists, knowing that we have very little time to actually fully talk about this issue. We have Albert Muchanga, Commissioner for African Union Trade and Industry. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And welcome to Rwanda.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Good evening, viewers.
Thank you. Of course, also with us is Claire Kamanzi, not new to the program, CEO of Rwanda Development Board. Thank you for joining us.
Very happy to be here. Thank you.
And also with us is none other than Robert Bavakurera, who's the chairman of the Private Sector Federation. Congratulations in person, and thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
All right. And Mheshimiwa Dennis Karera, who is the chairman.
Really high. Yeah, and I think that's a good point, yeah.
Right. He makes a good point, and also there's a point that he made, Albert, on the commitment by, the levels of commitment by certain countries as having affected part of the EAC programs, treaties, and the progress. And of course, with this continental free trade area, African continental free trade area, there are those who are seen as not ready to actually jump on board and work with the rest. I don't know if you're able to confirm, because there have been mixed reactions. You saw one of the viewers listed or tweeted there whether Nigeria is actually on board, or if it is true. We read on certain articles that they have actually retracted. There are others that are saying that no, they've gotten a clearance to come and actually sign this. I want to hear from you on how the continent is going to deal with this blockade, that if not all of us are going to actually be in on this, what plans do we have to actually move ahead and say this is now a coalition of the willing, and say those who don't want to come with us, you will join us later? Or are we going to, and what do we stand to lose if that is the case? I mean,
well, it's a process. Let me be. It's a process. When in 2015 the heads of state and the government decided to start the negotiation of what is going to be concluded on the 21st March, they brought up a principle which in technical terms we call variable geometry. So by that principle, the position is that when you take part in a regional or continental integration arrangement, those who are ready will not be obstructed by those who are not ready. So when the documents come up for signature on the 21st, the countries that are ready will be able to sign the documents. And then immediately that is done, the documents will not be closed for signature. Countries that are still undertaking national level consultations will be able to come and sign. And the good thing is that after this conference on 21st March, which is an extraordinary summit, we are going to have the regular summit in July in Mauritania. And the expectation that by then a number of countries would have finalized their national level consultations. Some were telling us they needed 3 or 4 months to undertake that. And in fact, when we were negotiating, At each stage, we were making decisions through the African Union Ministers of Trade, requesting all member states to undertake national level consultations so that they bring on board everybody, the business sector, labor movements, the parliamentarians, the civil society, and all other stakeholders, so that they are aware of the process, they see the opportunities so that they can fully express them. So we should not really see this as a major setback. No, it's a journey which is just beginning on 21st March. And as soon as the countries that are still undertaking national level consultations have finalized, they will be able to sign. The summit will agree. But they've already agreed. The summit has already agreed that for this agreement to enter into force, we need a minimum of 22 ratifications. So it means that 22 member states would have ratified. And those are the ones who would be undertaking a trade on the duty-free terms across the region. And as others are ready and there's opportunities, they'll be able to join.
They'll be able to join.
Yes. So there's no tragedy here.
It's no tragedy.
Yes.
Because some people have actually been wondering and saying this is one of the shortest, negotiated kind of pact. 21st, we're going to be saying our vows, and someone says you are rushing on the altar without actually spending enough time to know your spouse.
But the reality is that a lot of people see what we started in 2015. And what we are going to conclude on the 21st March. But the reality is that we started as soon as the Organization of African Unity was conceived. I think you are a student of history. Kwame Nkrumah made a passionate call: Africa must unite. Out of that passionate call, as we consolidated our independence, we started establishing regional economic communities. And there are 8 of them which are recognized by the African Union. And 2 of them, Rwanda is a member, East African Community, and the COMESA. Then in 1991, the heads of state came up with the Abuja Treaty, establishing the African Economic Community in 34 years, which is supposed to end in 2034. So it was continuation of this journey that in 2012, the heads of state and government said we should first track the establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Area.
Right.
Between 2012 and 2015, there were technical studies so that we establish the negotiation processes, institutions. So it has been a long period of preparation.
Right. So they haven't seen the back.
No, that's why I'm
of
explaining.
the relationship.
Yes, we have come from far.
Right.
So if I may come in
Yes,
on that
yes,
one
yes.
particularly. COMESA came into force in 1994. Today it is 2018.
Right.
It's about how many years are those? About 10, 14 years. You can imagine, since 1994, full members, I think, of COMESA member states are 19 by today, and only 15 are fully implementing the COMESA protocol. You'd wonder why. Where are the rest? Where are they folded? So when countries are holding back on certain decisions, I tend to look at it from different angles. There are different things, of course. Commissioner is a civil servant. He may not concretely say certain things. But us in the private sector will come out and say things. There are states that will have to consult elsewhere, outside of the continent. But we are discussing Continental Free Trade Area.
Right.
So some states will have to consult. A few patrons out there. I don't want to mention names, but this is what happens. In real
You
life.
mean they have to consult Western nations?
Well, I'm glad you conclude that for me. This that doesn't come from. But I know he'll miss his salary if he says that. But this is what happens in real life.
Right.
Some other countries, I've been following what's going on at the meeting. Some other countries have enjoyed monopoly in supplying the market without joining COMESA necessarily. So they get worried. If these guys all, if the entire continent becomes a free trade area, where are we going to put the rest of all these goods here?
Right.
So some of us, through our business intelligence, we know why some people hold back.
So there could be
But
some level of sabotage coming out.
absolutely, and that is to be expected, by the way. Each time you start something, Commissioner will be dealing with this a lot. There will be barriers presented by people you will not believe. But I think that should not prevent us from making a headway.
Right, right.
But there's also an opportunity that I think the CFTA brings, which is many countries are in more than one regional economic group.
Harmonization.
So you have the EAC. Some members are members of EAC and COMESA, like Rwanda. We have some countries that are members of SADC and COMESA. Some are members of COMESA and something else.
Yeah.
And so it becomes very difficult to implement. If I'm a customs officer and then I have different trade regimes for different groups, and countries have actually felt this inconvenience. The good thing with the CFTA, if it works out as envisaged, is that you begin to harmonize your tariff lines. So when a camera comes, you don't have to look at whether the cameras come from a SADC country or COMESA to know what trade regime to implement. And that brings a lot of predictability, harmonization, which is very useful for the private sector.
Right. And before I let you off the microphone, I mean, I wanted to ask you this, because one of the things that the Continental Free Trade Area brings is that almost all the countries in Africa are going to allow over 90%, which he actually mentioned in the onset, of the goods and services that they produce locally to actually be able to be traded freely across the borders. But in this sense, looking at it from a Rwandan perspective, what happens to the revenues, of course, which we had spoken about earlier on, but especially on the Made in Rwanda, let's say, campaign, the products that we actually make in Rwanda that we're trying to push for people to consume, if we're going to be able to allow 90% of goods from, let's say, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, to come into Rwanda, goods that we are also producing, goods that we are really breaking a sweat to promote under the Made in Rwanda campaign. Is this something that Rwanda is ready to do?
First of all, as I said earlier, Rwanda is already part of a free trade area. So we're already doing that for many countries within the EAC and even COMESA, and some countries that we even are part of the WTO. So it's not something that's new. But that said, the CFTA that is being discussed also gives a timeline. So we're talking about 90% of tariff lines to be at zero within 10 years. So there's a period of time that countries have to plan. Now that means that every country like Rwanda will go through their tariffs and see which ones and how they want to plan to achieve that goal within 10 years. And I think that's a very fair transition period that has been given to countries. And what that also means is that as we prepare the implementation, because this is not, we're going to sign on 21st, but after that we're going to start implementing. So what schedule of tariffs are you going to implement fast, and within 10 years, how are you going to spread? So that's planning, and Rwanda is going to be planning to ensure that how we implement gives us a comfortable phase as we do this to our economy.
Right, because
just I think this, because you raised it, you see, when you look at the pattern of European integration, what drove European integration is a phenomenon called intra-industry trade, which means trading within the same industry. And we are talking of industrialization in Rwanda, which is very good. They're going to reach a larger market. Now, when you are engaging in intra-industry trade, people in one country, for example, if they produce Rwandan coffee, people in the next country want to have a taste of Rwandan coffee, even if they are producing local coffee there. So there's variety.
But the reality...
Then similarly, people in Rwanda who wanted to have a taste of the products from the same country. So intra-industry trade is a driver of continental and regional integration.
Right.
Now, you see, part of continental integration is that you are surrendering a certain part of your sovereignty for the common good. Yes.
But the
let me
reality
just jump
is,
in there. I think Commissioner makes a good point. If you look at where Africa stands with intra-African trade compared to countries that are more developed, you will see that it actually benefits. Today we're at only 16% of intra-African trade. While if you look at Europe, it's one of the highest in the world. It's 70%. If you look at North America or Asia, it's 50%. So if we're 16% and you look at our global share of trade at less than 3%, that means that there's something useful about intra-African trade, which is why we should be doing the CFTA.
Right. But the thing I wanted to raise here, or to bring on board here, is reality on the ground. You'd feel a sense of protectionism trying to prop up within our markets. You know, you'll even see it if you travel using the airlines within the region, for example. You'll go to a certain airline that comes from a certain country. When they are doing the refreshments, drinks, and everything, the products that they'll be serving are purely from that specific country. But yet you say that there's this feel that I want to taste the Rwandan coffee. Yet that is not actually what is happening.
No, it will happen. It will happen because what matters is scale economies. You supply a larger market. And since we've talked of the airline business, to complement the African Continental Free Trade Area, the summit in January this year adopted the single African air transport market, which means that we're going to have open skies across Africa. Any airline can establish in any African country and have as many destinations across Africa with no restrictions.
Right.
And there's going to be increased competition. There's going to be increased efficiency. And with the competition and efficiency, the fares are going to go down. And a lot of Africans will start using air transport market. Right. That's point number one. Point number two, the summit also adopted the protocol on free movement of people, right of establishment and right of residence. This is bringing us closer to the African passport, such that anybody can go to any African country and without any restrictions. And Rwanda has even taken a step further, and a lot of other African countries. While waiting for this to come into force, they've come up with a visa on arrival policy for Africans coming from other African countries.
It's for the whole world. It's for the whole world now.
Yeah, it's not for the whole world. You see?
So it's a process. Robert,
what is the reality on the ground? I'll take example of East Africa. Before harmonizing, before we joined the East African community,
right,
there was a lot of problems in terms of differences in terms of tariffs. I take example of Tanzania, whereby a temporary importing trade of a truck to Tanzania, they were charging like $500, while in Rwanda we were charging $152. That was harmonized. Now Rwanda transporters are increasing in buying trucks. And secondly, if you see items like a cement, we have been having a lot of supplies from Uganda, Hima, Tororo, everywhere. Now with improved efficiency in production of cement in Rwanda, the Rwanda cement is taking almost more than 50% of the market. And it is going also in the region.
Right, and the worry there is I mean, that's usually the point, that the people who are not optimistic too much really feel that if, for example, in your business, for instance, anybody, not just you, having a business here in Rwanda that, let's say, manufactures sugar, for instance, are you ready for, you know, as the Continental Free Trade Area allows or says, to have others from Rwanda, I mean from Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, come in to bring the same? Or are we going to see an instance where, you know, you go and say to the ministers of trade and those in charge, come on, you know, we have to support our own, we have to support our local products?
For that case, you see, like now, when you remove the tariff barrier, now what remains is transport barrier. Because if you produce from Rwanda, it is cheaper than producing from Kenya. So again, there is also efficiency and cost of production. So you'll find that now, since Eastern Community started, production in Rwanda is increasing, despite the fact that Kenya has been in production industry for a long time. So there is no issue with trading and production in any country. And you see, other investors will look at the market. Will not look at the location or anything, but they look at the bigger market. So with the African Continental Free Trade Area, they look at Africa because they can be able to move goods from one place to another place.
Right, right. Dennis, I mean, for you, I mean, have you had, because as you see it at the ESC,
I need to comment on what Commissioner said.
Yes. And probably complement on that.
Complement on Robert's point about Continental freeing airspace of the continent. One is a clear message that I want to give, and I'm giving it through you, and I'll say it out tomorrow, and I'm giving it through Claire to speak it out in your opening remarks. I'm seeing you on the program. You know, there's been a lot of, we say so many things in these conferences. There's a lot of good talking around here. But when do we actually walk the talk?
Yes.
When do we implement these things? We have a challenge in the East African community. We have discussed freeing airspace here to make it easy for us to move around the region. You know, easy. Because one of the biggest challenges is the cost of transport around the region. So that actually you move to city within the region, go and spend there. The airline makes it difficult for you to spend in Kigali because, you know, the cost is prohibitive. Now, when are we going to see this happen? And this is, I think, one of the biggest points that should be raised to the executive, to the highest level.
Well,
so that the airspace, African airspace, there's the Yamoussoukro agreement, which was discussed, has never been implemented. We have studies from the ESC not implemented. So about the implementation, I think, should be one of the key things to address in this thing.
Right. And
Number
Robert,
two, before he responds,
yes.
I think Robert mentioned, earlier you expressed fears that made in Rwanda and protected. But you are protecting for which market? You see, you want to open up the market for all. Let's also work on the premise that the buyer is not in the Rwanda. No. For us, we talk of, these days we talk of 160 million of the East African region. So the buyer is not Rwanda. No. As long as there's free movement of people, because people will come to spend. You know that most of our, I'll tell you, in our trading here, our clients are not necessarily 80% Rwandan. No, you just need to open up the market. So what will be made in Rwanda will actually be bought by other people. You just have to style it up. Actually, people should come with an urge of, I have seen a couple of people here fly to Accra in Ghana. What are they going to look for? They are looking for Ghanaian shirts. But it's a brand that people want.
Right.
You
so
know?
you're categorically saying that
So
you have
Rwanda
not
should also have
received
some specific thing, this Rwandan style.
Right.
So you should have clients actually
Right.
setting for, you know, even if they're not coming here. If Robert or Claire is coming here or traveling to Europe, somebody should say, bring me that shirt from Rwanda.
because it's a brand
So our
that
clients
is
are not
like.
necessarily home-based here.
Perfect. He raised a very important
yes,
thing.
he raised a very important
implementation.
Point. Yes, implementation. But what I think, to complement what you said, for business people who are watching this program, when the African Continental Free Trade Area comes into force, they should be looking at a market of 1.2 billion people, because that's the African population. And out of that, about 350 million are middle class. And the middle class is well known for high consumption. So it's a grand opportunity. Now, the issue of implementation, the heads of state of the African Union have also been worried about the question of implementation. We make a lot of decisions, but we implement very few. So there is a program of institutional reform under the chairmanship of the current chairperson of the African Union, His Excellency Paul Kagame, President of this country, to really emphasize on need to ensure that the decisions that are taken are fully implemented in full and on time. Now, this particular one, yes, the Yamoussoukro Declaration goes back to the 1990s. It was a slow process. But the single African air transport market, which was adopted in January, less than 3 months ago, is actually completion of that declaration, making it into a policy commitment. So with the launch, any airline can start the process and operate across Africa without any hindrance.
Right.
Yes.
Which actually still brings us to that particular issue of the legal framework and of course the structures, because under this agreement people can actually move, human capital can move. There's actually a structure and a legal framework, it is said. But the worry here is, how do you implement this when each of the African country or each of the partner that signs this has its own legal issues that probably have not been harmonized with whatever is in here. For instance, let's talk about the human capital, the movement of human capital. Individual countries have their individual challenges of unemployment rates within their own countries. Now, this agreement says, also with the Common Market Protocol, that anybody should be able to go and work anywhere within the continent. But the problem is, we have countries that even have policies that locals first. So how do you deal with this? Do you take them to court for not following on the agreement?
Yes.
What do we do?
Yes, I think that issue came up with your earlier question about do you go and complain that we should protect the market? One of the basic principles under the African Continental Free Trade Area is that the goods coming from outside a country, which is a member of the African Continental Free Trade Area, will be treated exactly like the local goods. There's no discrimination allowed. That's the essence of free trade.
What if someone discriminates? What happens?
Well, there's where the protocol and distribution settlement. The product, the owner of the product that are affected, will take the matter to the tribunal. Yes, and somebody can be charged, but they'll start working. So that is covered. There should be no discrimination.
No discrimination.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
The example we are going through that similar thing in the community.
In the EAC.
Yeah. So we have certain agreed regulations here, and specific countries will tell you our internal rules don't necessarily allow this. But that situation is it's referred to there are arbitration centers where there are particular cases, resulting from dealings with business and regulations are different and laws are different.
Right.
But specific laws, specific countries may want to delay, as I said earlier, based on our regulations do not allow this, they allow this. But what happens usually is they want to implement it piecemeal. I remember what we did in the EAC here. We got together and people said, okay, the EAC member states are 5, 6. For us, we believe in this. For us, we believe in this. So what is the common denominator? What do we at least all believe? The one thing that we all believe in, and we start with that one. The rest you may want to, study your laws and ratify them slowly so that you come on board. Right. So we have tested it, and it is working in the community, so it can only be expanded.
Right, but the people who feel like probably, they have not witnessed that testing and working aspect. Looking at the specific example of what happened between Rwanda and Burundi as far as the ban of trade of certain goods when Burundian authorities did ban the trade within
I'll answer you very quickly.
Right.
What went wrong is not the legal framework. No. The legal framework is okay. The rules of origin frameworks are very fine, very fine. What went wrong is the lack of political will.
Right.
And this is one of the things I think we'll be asking the high levels to, among other things, I think there should be a specific bullet point which says, or a particular paper in the preamble to say, willingness, the will to get these things done. So what lacked in Burundi is not lack of legislation.
It was the political will.
But also, once we have an agreement and we've agreed, there's a tariff structure of agreed and the rules that have been agreed. When a country does not implement the rules as they are, there's a big part of the agreement, which is the dispute resolution mechanism.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so a country can take another country and say they're not abiding by what we've signed, and that dispute resolution mechanism should be able to protect the integrity of the agreement that has been signed. But that is notwithstanding the point that Dennis made, which is progressive liberalization. Even today, the World Trade Organization has been in existence for many, many years. They're still negotiating because you can't achieve 100% liberalization at a go. But you keep making progressive steps, and this is what we're also beginning to do here.
Right.
And we call it the built-in agenda. Right. It's a continuous process. Then I think the other point we should bring in this discussion is that when a country has signed and ratified an instrument like the Continental Free Trade Area, African Continental Free Trade Area, it has in essence domesticated it. It becomes part of national law. So there's no provision for conflict, and that's why you find that a lot of countries are requesting for time to undertake internal processes so that there's conformity with national laws.
Right.
Yes.
If I may, I want to go back on this point about protecting what you have, whether it's goods or services or skills. In the short term, when you open up, there might be costs to opening up. Like you said, you lose the customs taxes that you're getting from particular goods and other products. But we also think in the long term, opening up actually allows you to work on your competitiveness as a country. Because if I open up and let's say products from Kenya, from Nigeria, from South Africa are coming to the country and my people producing the same products, I need to make sure that I work on the competitiveness of my production in the country so that when these products come, they can compete not by being protected, because if you're protecting inefficiency, then you preserve inefficiency. But you want to be able to get your production to be as competitive as those that are coming in, so that people compete on who's giving a better price, who's giving a better product, on quality, not on protecting the inefficiencies that are there.
Right, perfect. Yeah. As I go to read the tweets very quickly, just shortly, I'm going to be standing and going to read the tweets. Robert, picking up on what Claire says on, being there on merit and not because, your country will be there to protect you and just, give you that push because you are a, product of that country. I want to hear again, because many people want to hear this so that they are confident enough, they feel satisfied that the made in Rwanda products, as Dennis said, if you repackage it well, anybody will travel from far and wide to come and actually take it. Many people have been complaining about the packaging issue. Some have been complaining about the consistency. Today, the product is nice, but 3 months down the line, if it was juice, it is just diluted, it's water, it's just chemicals. And people start feeling like, I need to go for another product. What have you done? What are you doing as a sector to actually deal with these issues? As I go to read the tweets, you can continue answering that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, with what we are talking about, government losing of income, the competition, preempt the local producers, I think that's not right, and it is not the reality on the ground. The reality on the ground is that when there is a market governs everything. So you'll find that what has happened in East Africa, there is more growth in private sector than before, simply because there is a large market. People are focusing on the market. So and revenue, which is lost due to import duties, is recovered through income from industries, from local production. Secondly, is that with competition in Rwanda. Say, for example, here in Rwanda, we are being well marketed by government. Everybody is saying Rwanda is a good country. How can they invest without seeing the market? They can't look at 12 million of Rwanda and then come and heavily invest. Instead, they look at the East African market. When they look at the African market, then it is
1.2 billion.
Yes. 2 billion.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong.
There's nothing wrong.
But Anangwe, talking about quality that you're talking about, for all of you in the country, you should visit the Kigali Cultural Village that we have next to Serena. We've built a cultural village where Rwanda is showcasing made in Rwanda products. When you go there, you will see that Rwanda has come a long way in quality. The quality it can compete with any quality that you can find all over the world. And that has been work in progress by the private sector members over time.
Right.
So please visit the cultural village and see what's there.
It is work in progress, as the commissioner said. Let's bring in our viewers who are tweeting us right here. I have Akizimana Jean, who says that unless our countries become flexible with their individual laws that govern their trade, this continental free trade area will remain unachievable. This is what he says, and I think you did mention that once ratified, then they become part of the laws. I have Edmund Kagira, friend of the show here, says, good debate on In Focus. Dennis Carrera makes a great point. The continental free trade area should be followed by real, I'm sure there's a continuation right there. Time to walk the talk. This is a continuation of that particular tweet. Most of these agreements are not followed by real actions and tangible results. I have Julian here who says, how is the continental free trade area ensuring differential impact on various socioeconomic groups given unequal access to assets, credit, and economic opportunities, e.g. women and informal cross-border traders particularly? Commissioner.
Yes. That's a very good question. Right now, you find a situation where we have a lot of cross-border traders, mostly the youth and women. And in quite a number of cases, they face a lot of harassment at the immigration and customs point. Sometimes they're even imprisoned. Right. And sometimes there's violence involving those people. So when we established the African Continental Free Trade Area, we're going to formalize that trade because there will be no customs duties. And when we have the protocol on the free movement of people, again, there will be no immigration restrictions. So the traders will be able to move freely without any problems. Then, to cater for small-scale traders, we also have what are called simple trade regimes, so that there's very little paperwork involved, so that they can bring in the items and move very, 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 very fast. So that is going to assist these small-scale traders.
Right.
Yes.
Perfect.
And we are also encouraging at the national level to try to promote capacity building for the small-scale traders.
Put them in cooperatives, train them.
Yes, put them in cooperatives or teach them basic accounts so that they are able to have books of account.
Right.
Why is that important? When they've got books of account, they can show the progressive development of their business and use that to apply for capital.
Right.
And they can develop over time. And some of the people they trade with, they also wanted to see evidence that the business person is paying taxes like the VAT. So that's the capacity building that we needed to trade. And they'll graduate.
Perfect. All right, let's just quickly look at another one over there from Janine, who says the implementation should be one of the main points addressed during the African Continental Free Trade Area. What investors are looking for is a bigger market. Of course, this, I'm sure, is quoting what Dennis Carrera had said out there. In practical terms, this is from JD. How do you address the fears and threats of significant tariff revenues losses and an even distribution of costs and benefits, which are among the main obstacles to the continent's integration? I think Leah did mention this over there. Let's take a look at this one here from Leonard Munga, who says this African Continental Free Trade Area is an important tool that allows Africa to cement ownership of own development and future. It's also inextricably linked to the new AU reform agenda to do things differently. It will require enormous amounts of energy, efforts, and persistence. Dennis,
yes.
Is this a new dawn for Africa? I mean, this is the question that we've all been asking ourselves throughout the show.
Let me first of all arrest the fears of the person who tweeted saying this must be a waste of time after all. A lot has been said and nothing done. It's unfounded pessimism. I'd rather people become more focused. You know, issues tend to pile up for as long as you don't discuss them.
Right.
But when you attack them, you actually deal with them. Commissioner made a comment earlier that about free movement of labor and services. And I think there was a question about how much some people don't allow it. But you see, again, when you talk about movement of labor or services, it's not everybody that goes. Countries sit and say, okay, so then who should go? What actually do you define as services? And then who are the laborers that should actually be going?
Right. So if this is a new dawn, we need to go.
Yeah, you don't get sweepers
yes.
of late. You've
Right.
seen Chinese and hawkers around here. So it's not everybody that, you know.
Right.
So you agree on a framework.
Right.
Let us send people to,
Right.
you know,
You agree on a
with these specific skills. They are needed. Let us send teachers. Let us send capacity building.
Perfect. Alice is in my ears, so I want us to really use very little time just to give us our parting shot. Is this a new dawn for Africa? This is what we've been waiting for? Robert, very briefly, your parting shot.
Yeah, I think it is good for Africa.
Good for Africa.
And it is good for the region. Whatever was started as East Africa or COMESA, it is now fulfilled in the whole of Africa.
Perfect. Claire, your parting shot.
I think Africa truly means business now. We're going to have the signing on the 21st of March. But before that, on the 20th, we have a business forum for Africa. We have over 500 participants that are business owners that are going to be here to discuss how they can make the CFTA operational.
Right.
That hasn't been done before. So Africa means business.
Africa means business. Commissioner, new dawn for Africa?
I'm the advocate of that. So it's obviously a new dawn and a new beginning.
Right.
Because the free trade area is just one step. After that, we will go to the next level, which is the African Customs Union.
Right.
When we are going to have a common external tariff for the whole of Africa.
Right.
So we are moving in a new direction as Africa.
Right. Thank you so much. Of course, it is time for us to say bye-bye. Right as we said it, it's not enough time to actually go through all these matters, but we've been able to touch on them right here. The conversation continues. Keep tweeting us at InFocusRW. That's the hashtag InFocusRW. Let's keep talking on these matters. Is it a new dawn for Africa? What do you think about this Continental Free Trade Area agreement that will be signed right here on the 21st of March? My name, as always, is Eugene Anangwe. Thank you for watching. Thank you.
gato ko mwabyifuje kenshi season nshya Assembly koko yaje izajya imara iminota 30 kandi cyo gatatu mu cyumweru izaba irimo imbyino kubita umuziki izaba irimo kwiyunga urwikekwe